Black boys aren't just waking up and deciding they only want to be basketball players or athletes or rappers or these things because that's just how they as Black boys' minds are set up. That's what they're being told. That's what's being funneled back at them by a system that doesn't believe in them, that doesn't invest in them.
A Black man needs to try harder. A Black woman needs to raise them better. Like, again, we always say the solution to a systemic effort is just trying harder.
There was no education push. There was no conversation about programs. There was nothing that they were pushing on us except for we want those little Black boys to come play for us.
But that's why it amazes me when I heard my peers back then say school isn't for me. I always looked at them and was like, well, what else is for you? We don't even see anything else to make the determination that this other thing is for me. Y'all ain't never even been to a basketball game. You just seen it on TV.
Public education, where the masses of Black people find their education in general. If the purpose is surveillance and punishment and prison, then naturally you're not going to want to continue to be in education.
Hello, beautiful Black people.
Hey.
Let me tell you why I've gathered you here. Why I've gathered you here today, and it's because Omar tweeted at me that we better be talking about on Olay Friends. Recently, there was an article that said that only about 19% of the student body at Howard University are Black men, and that ignited a large debate, discourse, discussion, all the things, which is interesting because I didn't go to an HBCU, but I do know to be a fact that this isn't a new statistic, that Black men have been a minority in some respects on HBCU campuses for a while, if not a long time, if not always, but I think it's an important discussion to discuss the reasons why that is. So to the room.
So it reminds me a lot of what it was like when I was entering the teaching field. When I started teaching in 2010, I was one of 1.7% of Black male educators across the country. When I left in 2022, that number was 1.3. And the thought I often had when people ask why Black men don't want to go into teaching is, would you go back to work for the place where you've experienced a significant amount of trauma? I feel as though by the time we graduate from high school, many of us, I would say the vast majority, have a negative relationship with traditional schooling. So the idea then is, well, why do I want to go to that route too? And then you combine that with what we perceive to be various other ways to make income now. The perception of, bro, we could break this whole thing down on wanting to be a star athlete growing up, wanting to be a rapper. I think that's probably shifted a little bit now to being a content creator, an influencer. I'll give y'all an example too before I land my plane temporarily. I went to my state school is the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. That's where I went. And statewide, we're 12% Black folks in general. At that school, Black people were 6% of the population total out of 35,000 undergrads. That's total, 6%. So now keep that in mind. That's about 2,000 Black students total undergrad. That means that there were probably roughly about 1,000 Black men or less on that entire campus.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like, that's not even, this problem has been there. When I started going there in 2005, we had something that we still do called Project 500, which was a way to recruit Black kids statewide at a minimum of 500. And they started that in the 60s. And when I started in 2005, they were still barely getting above that number. I went back to that school last year for a ceremony. I asked that question, where we at now? Barely above 500. So that number is going to continue to drop unless we are more proactive, but also too, we have to take into account the systemic issues that have led to this. This is by design. In America, this is how it's supposed to be. So how do we intercede to make that better?
So
Yeah.
Go ahead, Delaney. You did have something.
There.
So I was going to say, I think the systemic portion to really focus on, because the conversation is getting crazy on Threads, because that's where I be at. And I see a lot of people going about it, and not enough people like you did hone in on the fact that it's systemic, right? I don't think you can talk about the issue without like college enrollment specifically for men when the education system is already sidelining them from like kindergarten. I was reading something which I'm looking at right now, and it was saying that like Black boys are 3 times more likely to be suspended or expelled starting in elementary school. So already training them up for this idea, that we're putting that in the kids' heads, especially Black boys, that it's going to be more difficult for them. They are difficult to deal with in the education system, and they don't want to continue to progress with them. I went to an HBCU, as y'all may know, the number one HBCU in the nation, Florida A&M University. I seen for the first time in my life at that time so many beautiful Black men up on that hill in Tallahassee. And it was such like it was such a change for me. I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida, Palm Beach County, and over there it's like in school you'll see a lot of the kids kind of dwindle. And the school that I ended up going to for the last 2 years in high school, my teacher was a Florida A&M grad, a male, and he would always try to push the boys. They had to make a separate program for us called Emerald and Onyx, just so that we can get the boys to not, because they were, a lot of these universities, these PWIs were coming to look at the boys, should just take them, and there are a lot of Black boys that were on the football team, to take them to the football like field and those types of things. And this particular group, Emerald and Onyx, was 4 teachers at the school put it together to do college tours for us, and mostly Black colleges. A lot of boys didn't go, but the boys that did go, they came with us. And Florida A&M and a couple of other HBCUs took us on actual tours, classroom to classroom, made the days feel like this is what your day is going to feel like made us feel like actual students. Baby, across the tracks over there at FSU, they didn't care about nobody else. They took the football players and they sat us with them, but at the football field. There was no education push. There was no conversation about programs. There was nothing that they were pushing on us, except for, we want those little Black boys to come play for us in their football. This is what we have to offer them. So there was nothing about building or pushing their education. And this is all that's good for you. Even in school, those Black boys will tell you, yeah, I don't care about none of the courses I'm doing. They're telling me I'm going to be a star. They're telling me I'm going to be this basketball player, this football player, or whatever the case may be. And if I just maintain my grades, I'll be great. That's pretty much it. I think that they don't tend to encourage them. My teacher used to also push this for the Black boys. He wasn't afraid to have this conversation while we're in high school. He would speak directly to them and tell them, hey, the system don't want you to really go to school. It does, like, this is what it wants you to do. You need to think outside of this and this and this. I had a friend at Florida A&M, Tahir, shouts out to you, from Philly. And he ended up, he is a photojournalist, but he ended up getting out of journalism for a little bit and going into the school to teach back in Philly. He even was vocal about his experience. It was traumatic for him going back to teach. It was a really tough experience for him trying to lead these Black boys and things like that. He tried to push them, and he talked about it. He loved what he did, but it was very, very tough to try to get these kids to understand that education is good for you. Or even if you have a mind to do something, here's the way to get there. It's more than just this. It's more than just the streets. He was saying that was pretty traumatic. He ended up going back to photojournalism, but he talks about that pretty often as well. So I think that, like, literally they are training up these little boys, or putting in their minds that they aren't going to be something. It's not only that, I seen them try to blame Black women for the issue. Oh, Black women aren't doing enough to build up these children. And I'm like, this, again, if we have to focus on the fact that it is very much systemic for the education not to be pushed on Black boys, or for them to enroll in higher education.
Yeah, super agree. I first want to say FAMU is not the number one HBCU or public HBCU. I just want to throw that out there.
You looking to get your ass beat today.
I'm so sorry.
I don't think anybody's going to catch it, but
I just want there to be some accuracy when we talk. It's actually my alma mater, North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State
Oh.
Oh, certainly
University.
not. I'm gonna have to go side with my good
No,
sister
no, no,
Becca.
no, 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 no. You can pull it up. It's the
Well,
as of September
we, girl,
2024. Thank
we don't
you.
go by that. But that's okay.
And
Love
but
the school.
overall, it's Spelman. But anyways,
Love those schools. Heard about them.
I think
I
FAMU
heard about
had,
I heard about them. It's crazy.
you know, I don't know what you all are doing down there in Florida, but I know education, it's not a big one. And that's not, you know what I mean? Who's that? DeSantis? It's not your fault. Anyways, um, I want to talk about the systemic stuff because it's all really important, but I also want to talk about how annoying the conversation was on social media. It was just, it's so painful to watch people go back and forth about their own individual experiences. And I think it's important. Like, I think anecdotes are important, like all of that. And I'm not some huge academic, like, that's not me. But I will say, like, I'm a third generation HBCU graduate. So education, higher education, and particularly HBCUs have been like, you know, just like it's the reason my family has been able to accomplish what it's been able to do. And like, I understand the importance of higher education, but I know that that is not the reality for the majority, I would say, of Black people. And that people only using their lived experience is just, it's just like such a waste of time if it's not coupled with actual like research and data and other things. So that was so annoying to me. And then on the other side of that, it's like, damn, there isn't that much research about the Black male experience in education. I might also say it's just Black people in general have not been researched adequately. Like, we just don't know. And then the other piece of the social media conversation that was annoying was this, like, oh, Black men experience more violence inside of these systems than Black women. And I just, like, that's just not true. That's just not true. I don't know if folks have seen or read the book Push Out about Black girls in higher education. The school to prison pipeline is not an exclusively like male gendered experience. Like, Black women and Black girls are experiencing it too. So those things were just bothering me as I was reading. It was
It was a
like,
lot.
just because you watched your two cousins like experience is one thing doesn't mean that's the truth for all Black people.
So I think that, I know everybody's gonna get their opening statements off as it seems. No, it's interesting that in that study that they only talked about like HBCU enrollment for Black men. And I think that there's an important distinction there between like that and PWI distinction, because there was a stance on the internet that was like, it's just the HBCUs and they need to fix that.
Gotcha.
So Black men going to college is like, it's fine if we're looking at PWIs. I have yet to come across anything significant that points to like PWI enrollment is like stagnant or it's like increased for Black males. But more importantly, like non-Black people are participating in HBCUs, and Black women are still participating in HBCUs. So what is it specifically that is like pushing Black men away from the HBCU conversation? Now, for me, as somebody living in Atlanta that is from like that family is from the West End, so like I'm down the street from Morehouse, Clark, Spelman. The path was right there. I thought it was expensive, and growing up over there as a kid, I thought it was the hood, so I wasn't going. Period, point blank. But that's a whole nother thing. 'Cause I don't think that people are taking finances seriously into consideration to make the distinction between like a PWI and a HBCU. They're just not going at all. But I don't know why that distinction was made. Outside of like trying to paint HBCUs in a bad light in some sort of like media publication.
It's
Mm-hmm.
But I
it's
think that
trying to paint Black men covertly. It's also meant to paint Black men in a bad light because in the rising times of trying to make Black men seem like the most problematic element of the Black community, it's Black men that are jumping off shit. Black men are voting for Trump in higher numbers. Black men are this. By highlighting HBCUs, it's meant to suggest not only that like Black men aren't getting educated as much, but that they're not as committed to historically Black universities. They don't have the same kind of ideological commitment to the Black community. That's the, like, to me, what is the covert implications there on making that focus. Not to say that the author, like, this isn't, the author is inherently wrong to try to have this discussion and to bring these statistics forward or whatever have you. But I think when there's a lot always more at play than just an author of an article, but how it's chosen to be named and marketed or whatever by the outlets that they're on is also different. That was all I was saying.
I think that's a great point too, because with that, when you have these headlines without the proper context, you're leaving us to our own biases. And we know where that's going to go. Black men, Black women, how people are going to perceive that. You say, oh, Black boys ain't going to college. Take that. What y'all going to do? You know what I'm saying? And then in many ways, just like Delaney was saying, then that starts to, these gender wars emerge again. We start, well, Black women, what y'all, and then we start to go at each other as opposed to understanding, okay, just kind of how when I look up research, it'll say at risk, it's like, oh, system impacted. Like, why are we at risk? Like, let's break this down. So Black boys who don't even have the expectation of achieving high academically, Black boys who are in this educational system that is not for them, are not going to college as what is expected of this system. But what are they choosing instead? And I have a young man. This is a really interesting story, and I'm gonna try to be as broad as I can. But I met this young man one time that used to go to the school I taught at. About a year and a half ago, I was at the gym working out. Young man comes up to me and he's like, hey, what's up, Mr. Cram? And I'm like, hey, what's up? Now, normally people say what's up to me in this area if they recognize me from social media or I taught them before. I usually don't know. I just say what's up like I recognize them, right? And he starts talking. I'm like, so I say, hey, did I have you? He's like, no, man, but I wanted your class. And I was like one of 2 or 3 Black men in that school teaching in the whole district. And I was working out like a Monday at 9:00. And I'm thinking, he looked young. Like, I say, bro, are you supposed to be in school right now, right? And he was like, because he was like 18 or something. He said, nah, man, I'll drop. I say, well, bro, like, why did you drop? Like, it ain't for me. It's not for me.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So like we started having this conversation. Now, granted, I have to give this caveat. I'm currently mentoring this young man. He did eventually get his diploma. Well, he got his, the GED diploma, whatever, from an alternative route. Okay. He didn't like the school structure. And I later found out he's very, very talented in videography. In fact, I work with him a lot. And like the talent level he has is comparable to the videographers I've worked with who have been doing it for 20 years. And then I began to think deeply, and I still think he should, maybe not the 4-year university, but some extra credential. But I began to think, like, where would he fit in school then, too, if he's like, I really want to. He don't want to be on camera. He don't want to be a content creator. He wants to help people's platforms. And he's really good at it. He learned it by himself. And I think now, notwithstanding, he's very self-motivated. So that's not everybody fits that mold, too. He has self-determination. But I think a lot of our young boys are kind of thinking like him, but then the motivation doesn't enter the place, though. Or even the questions of why don't I think this fits me? And yeah, school, it gets boring, yeah, but it's a pathway to something else. So who's telling them that you can use this in a proactive way? And also, too, I'm curious to know, and I couldn't find this research, does this mean that our trade enrollment is going up? Or are young boys just leaving high school, not going anywhere? Is the dropout rate going up? These are a lot of other things I think we have to consider as well.
I think one of the, and this is a privilege I've long recognized, I think one of the greatest privileges you don't realize that you have growing up is, like, both my parents are college educated. My daddy went to Oxford on a full scholarship. He's an architect. My mommy is a CPA. Both my parents have masters, all that. And so for me, there's never a question on whether or not I was going to school. I was always talking about, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to do this. That was a matter of fact. And I think something like that seeming not only like matter of fact that's what's happening, but like that's what's normal to me. Like that's what's normal here. That's not like something that is out of reach to me. That is a great privilege to grow up with that, versus a lot of, it's the fact that it's like when we say like it's no one telling them that they have this route, that that they could do this, that this is attainable to them. It's the fact in and of itself that it's on the shelf, as though like maybe, you know what I mean, if you could attain, like it's not being, they don't have the privilege and the benefit of having a whole family of people who went to college. That's the thing that makes being a first generation college student and all these things an achievement, because it's the implicit recognition that it's much harder to do something when it's new to you. That's the whole problem when we say about like how families and generations are affected by the criminalization of one person, is because that's what becomes normal. If everybody in your family's gone to jail, you know what I mean, then going to jail doesn't seem foreign to you. It doesn't seem that crazy out of reach to you, versus in my life that seems insane. So that's the whole thing about environment. And I say that to say, I think, and I always feel this way anytime Black men are discussed online, I always feel like systemic issues are shorted. And I specifically feel like it's insane to talk about college enrollment and not talk about the criminalization of Black boys and men. That just feels absurd to me. And to echo Delaney's sentiments, yes, black women and Black girls are treated like shit in the education system as well. Treated like shit by America, criminalized, and also members of the system. However, I'll say this as someone who's a criminal defense attorney: the amount of women to men in the criminal system is vastly more men in the men. Like you're gonna represent hundreds and hundreds of men to the amount of women that you're gonna represent, right? And in terms of like, and the school to prison pipeline, right? Obviously affects black men and black boys and Black girls. All of these things affect us. It's just about the numbers. And I think you have to think the average Black man at one point in time between 18 to 29 years old has been arrested or incarcerated at some point in time in your life. So think about how that impacts, like when you're wondering where all these like Black men are, like why they're not there. In addition to these schools being incredibly expensive, incredibly expensive, you're growing up already in an environment and already dealing with larger systemic issues when you're born that kind of like makes you feel precluded to these environments. And also like, as someone who I consider myself in one of the ways that I'm very privileged when it comes to education. Like I'm incredibly privileged, and I know what it is. I hated my law. I've dealt with racism and bullshit my entire academic career, from I was a child on, even in the Bahamas, America, all the way up. But I know what it is to decide I hated it. Like my law school, I really hated it. Like I truly felt like this is the most racist, fucked up environment I've ever been in. And I hate it I've never shook that off. I hate it. I hate them. I tell the deans to this day, any opportunity I get, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to be a participant. Like I know how that felt. And I can only imagine having started my educational career earlier feeling that way. Like the way I ended up feeling depressed and deflated and over this and detached from this or whatever, like that is as somebody who's had the benefit of like years and years of being perceived, tokenized or academic excellence and all these different things, to start your entire like to go into an educational system that inherently does not see you as somebody worth investing in. Like the reason why like Black boys aren't just waking up and deciding they only want to be basketball players or athletes or rappers or these things because that's just how they as Black boys men are set up. That's how minds are set up. That's what they're being told. That's what's being funneled back at them by a system that doesn't believe in them, that doesn't invest in them, that treats, to when you said it earlier, Ernest, I hadn't thought about it. When you said, Black boy, or whoever brought it up, that Black boys are suspended at these higher rates. When I thought about it, I was like, shit, my little brother was suspended in like kindergarten or elementary school or some shit like that, or expelled. And I remember, and like, I'm like, oh shit, like that isn't even something I bothered to really assess in that way, like what's happening there. And like, just for regular, like my brothers are autistic. And so behavioral issues as autistic children, regular behavioral issues, and expelled him. And like, when you're dealing with life, you don't have the time to stop and think like, oh shit, like my parents didn't have the time to stop and assess like, this is a larger structural problem with how Black boys are being treated. I never assessed it until this moment. So it's like, when that's what's happening and that's what the experience in the environment is for you, and you live in also as men, like the general thing, or like whatever, what we tell, and because I think if you look at it, women are going to school more than men, period, across the board, and all the different racial demographics. And I think that also speaks to what we tell men, like what we are giving men to want to achieve, like to aspire to, what we think is like what looks dope, what's masculinity, where to chase the money, all these different things. But I think it's like that's a larger societal problem, and not this, like, the way people start discussing it is like the brain of the black man and black boy is skewed, and they have all these like crazy fucked up values, and it's like they didn't get that from nowhere. It didn't happen in a vacuum. Black boys are not sitting in a factory by themselves just thinking fucked up shit, you know what I mean? It's being imposed and fed to them so that they respond to a system that treats them that way, and then when they don't achieve, that's used to affirm the negative things about them that were pushed to them in the first place to not make them try. That's my long rant. I give it to
No, that
everybody.
was
Yeah, I think that higher education and education in general is actually just not a place for education for Black boys. It's a place of like surveillance, punishment, like all of those other things. Like it's not about actually educating a group of people. And so obviously there's like an understanding and value in education that some people have, but when that is not the purpose of education, public education, where the masses of Black people find their education in general, if the purpose is surveillance and punishment and prison, then naturally you're not going to want to continue to be in education. And I don't like understand the Black male studies group of people. I'm not a feminist scholar. I am a feminist though. But what I will say is that I have read so many things, like particularly about Black boys within the last couple of months that I haven't read before. Because I didn't even know that, like we were talking about the gap in research, I just didn't even know that it existed. And so there is a difference in how Black girls and Black boys are experiencing the world, although we may be affected by the same systems. I do think that there's a difference. And I will say that there is utility in discussing the nuances and differences. And I just think that like on social media, that conversation, it's almost as if there is no utility in discussing the nuances, the differences. And then the other like little petty point that I have, because I just have to make it. I just think all these groups for young Black girls are created by Black women. And Black women are like, okay, Black girls in my neighborhood need to read more, so we're going to create this group for Black girls to read more. This expectation that Black women have to like save everyone all the time, or as if like Black women just don't care about Black boys and there's no interest in supporting Black boys in our communities, is bullshit. And it's also just like ahistorical, like that's not real. But what I think, there are Black men who are doing programs and like helping Black boys out, but it's always not a focus on what Black men are actually doing, but instead a focus on how Black women need to be better, like, and how Black women need to show up better. Like I think about Black Men Build, who like has chapters everywhere across the country that's doing some incredible work. Shout out to Phil. I think about, there's more groups that are doing like anti-intercommunal violence work, and those are Black men that are doing that work. So why is fuck us for? Like why, you know what I mean? Like why does it have to be what we're not doing when we are in fact doing the things?
No, because they are literally, that's the whole point of the conversation. Somebody may bring it up and they always have to zero in to be divisive online. And instead of actually finding out the real issues, they're going to blame it on Black women instead of celebrating the fact that we all, okay, as Black people, we know that how they don't want us to be educated. The system, again, we can call it a systemic issue. They don't want Black people to be educated. Thankfully enough, Black women are the ones that hold the most master's degrees all over the nation. We're the most educated. So that's great. We're not the reason why the Black men aren't being educated. We're pushing for the young Black girls. We're doing what we need to do. I've seen I was part of the 100 collegiate Black women when I was in school. I know they had their 100 collegiate Black men in school. There are so many different organizations and groups that will cater to Black men. But again, this is a systemic thing. Also, you mentioned, Omar, the financial portion. You live out here in Atlanta. You said you didn't want to go because it was kind of hood in your mind at the time. But also that it's expensive, right? And you mentioned that layer as well, Olay. It's expensive. Some of these people are coming from communities. I know for me, When I first got to the Hill, right, there was so many people from, because we call it the Tri-County area, so many people from the hoods of everywhere, Miami, Belgrade, everybody was coming up, South Bay, everybody was coming up, and they was like, man, I came here because, man, it's a scholarship, whatever, or, this and this, and I got assistance from this. And a lot of them didn't have much. They came on sports scholarships. That was the most that I've heard for some of these young boys to go off to school. So there's a gap there. There's issues there. There's space and there's a void where even in the financial system, to give us financial aid and stuff, there's not a lot of things that are catered to the young Black boys to go off to school. Or some of them had to choose work life over school, because that's just their environment, that's their communities. So to get this money to pay my bills instead of saving money or going to school, where I know that in my household, I may be the man of the house because of my environment or whatever. It just may be that for these Black kids, because again, we don't live in a country that pushes or tries to make sure that the Black people succeed. So we're doing that for ourselves. And a lot of the young boys that I grew up with were the men of their household at that time, or had jobs to get quick money to help they family pay what they needed to pay. I'm not saying that everybody, because also I lived in a neighborhood that was at that time, not so much today, but at that time we were considered suburban for the area. So, but across the street, I knew a lot of my other friends who they really were struggling. They were taking care of their kids, or not kids, their little brothers and little sisters, taking them to elementary school and going off to school or to slang drugs on the corner at such a young age to bring home money, keep the lights on or whatever. So education wasn't at the forefront of their mind. But again, there are spaces and their voids that don't cater to the young Black boys for them to go to school, even within FAFSA. We know that they make that such a hard thing because you need to have either both parents' information or this and that to get them to even get financial aid at times. And that's a struggle to get, if whatever the case may be. You may not have the parent in the household, all this type of stuff. You need your information. I have a friend who couldn't get, they're an immigrant, and couldn't get to their personal information because don't know where their parents are. Foster care system took them. So that was a difficult thing for them. So it's like a whole bunch of stuff that they make difficult. They purposely make it hard. They don't push for assistance here. But again, this conversation that's online that's trying to blame Black women instead of celebrate that and use that, like you said, to push the conversation that Black men can do it too. We can do it for them. Or that, there are Black men who are trying to do it, but they don't want to. It's not something that to talk about a positive portion of it to help push more where guys can contribute to the cause. It's just to find blame, and especially make it amongst our people. And that's
my my um my unpopular opinion, and I'm going to respond to Delaney's point. My unpopular opinion is that we are failing Black children, like the entire community. So that's Black men and Black women are failing like we're failing children, we're failing Black boys, we're failing Black girls. And I think, to respond to Delaney, like, how does a conversation always ends up being about like the Black woman's failures on if Black boys aren't going to college? It's because inherently in a patriarchal society, the belief is that women are responsible. It's the mothers who are supposed to raise the children. The mothers are supposed to be the caretakers. The mothers this. So that's the one. So that's the first level to why it are like the blame will always come back to the woman, because the system is designed to put the blame there. You're responsible for raising these children. Two, what happens to, especially in a lot of households, is when the father isn't present. And even though that might think like implicit, like in your mind, it seems intuitive that would mean, okay, we place this blame on the absent father, on the absent Black father. But the reality is, people tend to, if I'm in my home feeling neglected and all these different things or whatever, it's the parent here that I'm being disappointed by. It like often these feelings get placed on the mother who is there. Also, I think something to take into consideration, and that isn't in larger discussions, because the problem with having a internet or a society that responds to these kinds of like discourse with like gender wars, like it makes you not, it makes you hesitant to discuss things that are important and need to be talked about, right? But if like we talk about violence in our communities, and I think FD's talked about this on a different Olay and Friends episode, but if you think about like violence in our communities and statistically how it trickles out, if you're looking at like men being violent towards their wives, and it's typically wives mothers doling out the violence on their children. That's what's happening in the household. Like on average, that's there. So there is an existence of of having a mother in the home, or like having strained and tumultuous and difficult relationships with your parents. When you live in the Black community is very like, your parents love you, honor and respect your parents above all else, XYZ, yada yada yada. So all these issues and difficulties and stressors that you're dealing with and you're coming up with as a child, and also all the inherent like misogyny and patriarchy and masculinity and all these things that are fed to Black boys to make them feel, that they spend for the rest of their lives trying to measure up to and feeling inadequate and struggling with, often are, it's not the fault of women, but it's often given to them by their mothers who tell them like, this is what a boy is supposed to be, this is what a man's supposed to be. And oftentimes too, I think the majority of educators are women. So if you're going to school too, a system that also come in mirrors, you have a struggling home life, you go to school, and now you also have teachers and a system that doesn't believe in you, criminalizing you, make you have to be a bad student, this and the next thing. You're also having your women teachers do that to you. And so it leads, it's a vicious circle, and it's not right that it comes out of this output of like, blaming the Black woman and being sexism and all of this. But that is how it's happening, because our kids are being failed by everyone. There are a lot of different fundamental things that I think are accepted norms in our community about how we parent children and how we treat little Black boys and Black girls that is inherently so fucked up and traumatic. And because no one wants to accept, like, you cannot, it doesn't matter how every year we think gotten so progressive, so woke, is so woke, mind virus, all this foolishness, still be riding or dying for beating their children. Like beating their children, like beating their children, and then don't understand like how we start from a place of like mistrust and issues in the relationships that children have with their parents. And thus, if they have issues in the house, what happens, do you think, at the next place they go to, where that place then treats their parents as like the police they call on them? You know what I mean? It's just so many different levels to it. To me, it's a larger problem of we're failing Black children. But anytime anybody tries to point that out, it becomes about who's failing them more. It can only be either the Black mother or the Black father failed them, rather than Black people as a whole, our communal understandings. I don't even just mean the parents, everybody, because there's so much. Think about how often children will talk about, like, cry out for help, like tell their other family members, tell the schools, tell whoever what's happening at home, and the answer is like, those are your parents, they love you. You know what I mean? That, like, so that's my long tirade to say everybody's to blame.
I just want to correct one thing, because I think this is where things got weird on social media, is that Black women are not the most educated group in the US. That's not true. There was one study a while ago that talked about how Black women are
On the
the
rise.
most educated amongst Black people. But in comparison to other groups of people within the United States, Black women are not the most educated. I think there maybe was a year where Black women had pursued and graduated with the most degrees.
The most
for a
master's
couple
degrees. I think that was,
yeah. But the way that statistic has been like bastardized and manipulated, like, it's just, and so then that like weird energy of like, oh, Black women, like, obviously we've overcome all of these systemic issues, and so now we are the number one most educated group in America, and that fuels this really nasty conversation, when in reality,
You're absolutely right.
hey, like, that's not true. And also, not being able to read data could be indicative of that thing not being true.
No, I think, but it is
that
true that Black. This is a fact. Now the whole, I agree with you. They've taken that and made it the whole thing. But the point is that Black women do receive the most master's degrees. I think Black bachelor's degrees, whatever we do is in the nation we do. However, that could be, there's a reason to that, because we're not pushing these boys or whatever. But you're right, the conversation does go in a way that is not supposed to, where they start, like you said, messing up the whole thing and making it feel like we are the queens of this whole thing, and we have to stay here, and it only belongs to us. No men can be a part of the conversation. And this is the same thing with the 92% and the 75, 80, 69, whatever, that voted for Kamala Harris. They did the same thing with that. I don't like that whole conversation and that whole centering it there. If we're all trying to work toward getting everybody to be educated, we're all trying to work toward, the whole thing. If we contribute to those conversations that are fully divisive, we're going to keep it that way. We're not going to help. We're not going to contribute to the bigger picture. So, Olay, I agree with you on that too. We are the problem as well when it comes to pushing for a change with that.
Omar, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, those people that are misquoting and misreading the stats, it's funny because let's say it's a woman that's tweeting that out in the form of attack, and she's misunderstanding the statistic that she's even reading. I personally believe that's somebody that doesn't even have a degree. How are you using that claim in that conversation? You don't have a degree, and you're trying to paint people in bad lights. It's all nasty work. I think it is all super divisive rhetoric that's going on online, and definitely like the communal aspects aren't necessarily being addressed because everybody wants to point blame. I just find it funny when these people that aren't even participating, like it'll be black men on the other side of the conversation. Yeah, we're going to school for trades. We're not spinning our wheels to get into all this school debt and then ending up with degrees that don't earn X, Y, and Z money. Whole time this person isn't in trade school. Like they aren't participating in any sort of trades.
Oh my God.
They're not plumbing. They're not cutting grass. They sitting at home rolling up. So like I don't understand what purpose these people serve, as opposed to just like pushing nasty ass. What's that one dude? Oh, I don't want to call his name. He has the tie. I think his name is Z Miller. He's on Twitter running around. Yo, people are in $100,000 in debt just to have a 60K job. That's not true. That's just a full on lie. We don't have. We can have this conversation and talk about how detrimental it is by telling the truth.
Mhm.
Like it's still gonna hit. You don't have to then say, yo, they're in $200,000 of debt, making $40K a year. That's that person. I ain't gonna lie. That person got a doctorate and then decided to work at McDonald's. Like I don't know that you just talk about that one person, not everybody.
What I think is like another thing that feels frustrating to me is that there isn't, like, people do have insane amounts of debt. But the thing isn't to say like,
don't get an education.
You are stupid, so you shouldn't go to school. It should actually be like, hey,
we should like.
Why is college this expensive?
Yes, that's the bigger question.
Like, why are so many people in debt? When did this happen? Like, what policies are in place to keep people that aren't from legacy institutions outside? Like, what are these systems and things that exist? But instead it's like, y'all are so dumb. Why did you go get your bachelor's degree? And I understand it's easier to punch down, right? It's easier to just like look around you and punch instead of looking up and being like, oh, it's weird that like higher education isn't a public good in the way that it was before. Like there's conversations to be had. And the other thing is like people don't know history. People don't know like the history of higher education. People don't know the history of education in Black communities, like movement schools, like Malcolm X School of Liberation, like the way that we have decolonized education in our communities when we were kept out of higher education and just public education was bullshit in general. So I think that there's a lack of just like understanding history. And then there's like a lack of curiosity about like why things are happening, or like, and I would say a lack of imagination, like political imagination of what our communities, what our country, what this earth, how we could actually be existing. It's not that like we have to go into $500,000 worth of debt to go to school. That's somebody else's idea of how we have to live. But it's way easier to say what could be and instead say this is what it is. Like get with it or get lost.
And our parents at one point in time were able to work and pay for college as they went. Like this system operates as a community. Like it takes a nation of millions to hold us back. It's a communal effort to hold us back, but then we blame individuals. Like Ronald Reagan made the cost of college go up in California as the governor, as the president, because it was too much. Like we Black folks are going to college, liberal white folks are going to college, Hispanics are going to college, and we're increasing our livelihood. We're protesting. We're going against the system, and they couldn't have that. Like that's a completely different conversation than saying, well, Black men need to try harder, or Black women need to raise them better. Like again, we always say the solution to a systemic effort is just trying harder. Right. They didn't try harder. That's not why they've had any type of success in this country. They are the affirmative action hires. You know what I'm saying? DEI was them. And we always say, well, it's them. They ain't working hard enough. Like I'm reflecting on everything y'all been saying. Like when I was teaching, I started the Black Student Union, and for the last 6 years of my teaching career, it bothered me that I would have 30 kids in that class. They would voluntarily come after school, and like 3 would be Black boys. And I began to realize, because I had a male mentoring group first, and it would start off as a lot of boys coming, then it would dwindle down to like 5 or so. What happened is, and I had this conversation so many times, me and one of my other Black male colleagues, and we didn't, surprise, surprise, we weren't coaching sports. We were really just he was coaching chess, and I'm doing a Black Student Union. They want us to coach basketball and football. But our Black boys were either going to play those sports, or they were going to be going to a video game club or something like that. So the times when we had the most participation from Black boys was when we would veil our mentorship through something like, hey, we got a video game competition after school, come through and you can win something. Then it's all boys and maybe 1 or 2 girls. So like, and I think back to what I would, when I was in high school, it was sports. And then when I stopped playing sports, I got a job, and I was thankful. I was grateful enough to be able to do work study. So I worked and got paid and got a grade. But that's the mindset we have. What's the immediate incentive I can get from something like this? And at that level in high school, that's kind of how we have to mask it. We got to bring in the well-known people, the well-known alumni, and also be very, very honest with these boys. Like, we ain't got to be brutal, but let's just be like, okay, you want to play ball? Okay. In your mind, you're like, you ain't even on the team, bruh. You ain't even starting. You number 12. Okay. My conversation is, bet. So what you going to do when you finish, though? Average NBA career is 3 years. Average NFL career, 4 years, bro. You 25. What you gonna do? I'm talking to you like, yeah, you're gonna make it, but now you 25. You got, 50, maybe 50, 60, 70 more years. What's the next plan? I'll talk to them about ownership. Okay, bet. You want to own a team? You want to coach too? Coaches have, look at Gino, what's his name? Gino, yeah, like, dude, goated. He probably came, who knows if he could hoop, but he got a long, again, teaching. So like trying to to shift the way we talk, like we got to meet them with the way this system is. It has to be a little self-determination, of course, and we got to meet them in the middle somewhere too. And I want to just close with these anecdotes right here, because we talking about what Black women, Black men ain't doing. Like, I'm proof of what that actually does look like. I was the first male in my family to go to college. My grandfather on both sides didn't go. My dad didn't go. I went to college. Now my nephew's about to graduate from Kennesaw State down there in a couple weeks, right? Like, I say nephews, I mean cousins. My cousin's about to graduate. But I also keep in mind too that I have a nephew now that's 9 in Chicago. He started off school going to a private school on the South Side. And 2 years ago, matter of fact, this month, because I made a video about it, and I put the whole school on blast. This young white female teacher told she stated, and he heard her say that he was the dumbest kid in class. He heard that statement, 7 years old, while talking to my sister, who's older than me, having conversations with him, after school, checking in on him. He subtly mentioned it. Of course, my sister was heated. Going to the school, having conversations, they denying it, talking in circles. Then they come around to just start making excuses for it. Eventually, she transfers him, to a school that's predominantly Black. Now, this year, again, majority Black teachers, majority Black kids. He was supposed to write down one day what he wanted to get on a standardized test, their goals. He set a standard. The teacher, who was Black, told him that his standard was too high, that he was going too high, right? My sister finds out, intercedes, and finds out that at that school, teachers are told to help kids make realistic goals. Now, in spite of that, that young Black boy who's 9 years old exceeded his goal. That boy reads at like dang near a middle school grade level, and it's in spite of the school system. It's because my mom was an educator. My dad had set expectations. My sister ain't playing. His dad is college educated, right? So like when we think about who's telling Black boys they're brilliant, it ain't really that many people. We think about the agents of socialization, like who in the family. Got to be somebody in the family. But if it's just you, it's going to fall on deaf ears when they go to school. Who's telling them at school? Who in the media? It's about the Black body as a man. Like, I don't get and I'm talking about broadly. We don't get taught that this is great. We get taught like, how tall are you? We get scouted for hooping. Yeah. By the time we can walk, bro, like those videos of NBA players hooping and molding their kids at 3, I get it. It's cute and all of that. But like, where are we scouting young Black boys to be the next governor, city council member, you know what I'm saying, agent or like a doctor, like that. That is part of the reason why we don't see that, because every black boy think they going pro. And I go to talk to these kids and I ask them and they saying the same thing. Now it's sports and now it's to be an influencer. Those are the two main things. Now they don't even understand how it works. I'll say, you want to be an influencer? Bet, go to college. I wouldn't be where I am if I ain't go to college and teach.
Absolutely.
Being real, you got to know how to communicate. You got to know how to write scripts. You got to be able to do the camera angles and all of that, right? So I think we have to think about, again, as a communal effort, who's telling these boys they are great. Dr. Gloria Ladson Billings talks about that, like, instead of deficit learn, like asset model. What you have is great. I got all girls. So like my experience though is I got 4 girls. 2 and 2 learn completely different. Mm-hmm. 2 are tilers right now. When they play, I got 1 girl that's building with the magnet tiles. She's 2, like building these wonderful edifices. Like it's the most amazing thing ever. She's building a little community. My 5-year-old is playing with the bus and she's trying to tear it down. She's trying to tear it down. She can build, but she's very hyper. She's active. She wants to move around and run. She's an athlete, right? Eventually, they'll both be in a school that expects them to learn the exact same way, that expects their intelligence to be measured the exact same way, and looks at them differently if one gets an A and one gets a C. Not realizing that they have unique forms of intelligences, right? And I think that's something we have to consider with boys and girls too, is like when they enter that school system, oftentimes we look at them the same way we're going to look at somebody else who has a completely different learning style. And the percentage of boys who prefer to sit down and learn things like me and read articles like me will be platformed like they're smarter than a brother who can build something from scratch. And that's just not so.
You saying that makes me think of how my mother used to whoop my ass for not being good at math. And I let me tell you, when you think about it as an adult, like I remember calling her up, like, you really are a goofy ass. Now that I'm an adult, like you are worse than I ever thought. Like, I'm not good at math. Like, I'm 31. I'm still not. I'm not good at it. And you're going to beat my, instead you be happy that I'm excellent at reading and writing and all that shit. You busted my ass for not being good at math. And I think like you know, we think it's funny when you see the the Johnny had 2 apples and then like the parent screaming. But like, it's so funny, but it's not. It's communal trauma that like, that's how we be getting taught. You don't understand how they just fucking tried to teach it to you. So it's like, you know what I mean? Violence. That's really how my mother used to give it up. And that's really how a lot of these teachers give it up too. You know what I mean? Like, so that,
you know what I would say? The educator in me would say, you just ain't taught math the way you prefer to learn.
That's what, it's.
I'm going to tell y'all right now. And look, y'all, everybody look me in my eye. I have figured this out. The side of my brain that's for languages, you know how that works, doesn't work. Everything that I'm not good at is the same thing. Like, I can't do math. I can't read music. I cannot do foreign languages. Anything science and me don't go too good. Anything that tries to create a new system of understand, like a new language to interact with this, I can't do it. And that's fine. I figured it out. I really figured out my whole life of being excellent at some shit and being absolutely deplorable. When I tell you, I got an A in everything in college, quite literally everything, and almost couldn't graduate from failing Italian. Repeat, like you don't understand. Like, I had to really go to this lady and beg her to pass. And in high school, I had to do the same shit again. Like, Spanish, beg Senor Pizzata, like, please, if I name drop, I love Senor Pizzata. I love him. Like, if you pass me, I would just not go to your class and interrupt it. I promise. I'll just not go.
He said, call me Senor.
I love Senor Pizzata to this day. We follow each other on Instagram. I love him.
Like, Senor Rodriguez. Love him down.
See? But I can't do nobody's language.
We can always do math when our paychecks come around, when it involves like
I can't do no math.
No, I can't do math. I'm not really
I have so much trauma from my mother and like math and numbers that I don't wear a watch.
Don't play with my coins.
The last time I wore a watch, I was 15 years old.
No, don't play with my coins.
If you short me a couple dollars,
I'm gonna be great at math.
I'm probably
going
not
to be a mathematician.
Not me. My mom, y'all understand, my mother really was a terrorist, like a light-skinned terrorist. No. She would literally be like, I promise you to this. My mommy would be like, she'd either ask me to count, these are the sort of traumas of my childhood. She would either ask me to count money or what time it is. And if I was too slow with like, I went to use my hands to count, like, you oh, it made me so mad. Like, you ridiculous person. Like, what am I at a competition? Like, if I get why can't I use my fingers? What are you getting angry about? You're an accountant. I'm a child. Like, she's literally, if I didn't count the money fast enough, or I like, when you had the watch where it was too slow on me figuring out that time, this woman would carry on so bad. And when I tell y'all a lifetime of trauma, if you ask me to count something, I'm not gonna do it. And then you ask me, I'm not gonna wear no watch. I refuse. So I do understand. Fuck you, Omar. Okay, you weren't there. You don't know my mother gave it up.
Specific. I didn't know what was going on.
Because if I wore a watch, here she come. Like, what time is it, Alimi? And if it's not fast enough, she's gonna lose her mind.
I think that's an
Okay.
immigrant
You
thing.
really
That's a
did.
Caribbean thing. I think that's a Caribbean thing because my parents were similar, but they were immigrants, and they would do this thing in my household where all of us, they would put fear in us in a way where, and I'm not saying this was healthy. I'm not, whatever, but I would say they would do this thing where, okay, you went to school. Mind you, I was interpreting. At 5 years old. Okay. So that was my job. Mama ain't speak no English. I was filling out paperwork at 5 years old. Government documentation. I'm over there. She's at a job interview. There's a little girl. It's me next to her, doing all this stuff. Now, these schools that I was going to that were pretty racist against us, they were utilizing us at 5 and 6 and 7 to go and interpret for other kids. It was a full-time job for somebody else, but they didn't have that. So we were doing that. But my parents, they put this pressure on us, and they would be like, so you gotta, they telling us that you failed this course. It's reading. So we brought you over here, we raised you here. Well, what did we do that was wrong? You telling me you can't read? You cannot read this thing. And it's literally like a book this thick. It's a lot of learning, a lot of like how my mind needs to move.
Is it thesaurus?
So you're dumb? Yeah. So you're dumb? No, I got a thesaurus, a dictionary, all the things for my birthday because my dad was like, no, you got to read. So like, it was literally, you need to read. So you telling me that you got to see. So are we raising dummies in this family? Is that what we're doing? Now you got to read 4 books today. You can't do nothing. You need to read 4 books.
I see would have got my leg broken, and I'm actually not exaggerating.
It's like this thing that they feel like because they brought you here, you got education. My mom, like my dad too. They think that, like, even my nephews who are with her right now, they'll call me and tell me the same kind of. Grandma said, like, she's like, am I dumb because I didn't understand this paperwork for her job? And I'm like, Mama, I had to call Mom, like, you can't do that. They don't know your work. They are not certified nursing assistants. They don't know your work they're not dumb because they don't understand this. They're reading it to you just fine. They don't know this position. They didn't go and certify for this thing like that. But in my mom and my dad's mind, it's like, you need to know everything because these people can't call you stupid. So what you gonna do, walk around and let these white folks call you stupid? Right?
I definitely didn't experience I didn't experience any sort of violence because of me being bad at school. I wasn't really that bad at school, but I do feel like my Nana, my mom's mom, was a bit, she was a bit militant, and she loves to talk. She used to love to tell the story about how I never did any of my workbooks. She would, during summer break, because she was a teacher, she went to Fayetteville State University in North Carolina. Before it was Fayetteville State, it was a teacher's college. And so a lot of Black women in North Carolina who were pursuing higher education went to go to become teachers. And my Nana's from Eastern North Carolina, Northampton County. So that was really just like the pathway. Paid her way through school. I love her down. That's why I'm talking about her. But anyway, she had all of these workbooks, and my brother would do the workbooks. Like would listen to my Nana. It was a whole thing. I would not. I would be like, girl, it's summer. I'm trying to go outside. But she was like so serious with my brother, and she would just end up letting me go. But by the time I got to middle school and I like couldn't do math, I totally wish that I maybe would have done those workbooks. But I say that to say that a lot of kids, like, I wish that they would have had somebody like my Nana who was like, yo, you need to do these workbooks. Like, this is something that's really important. But she was an educator, and we had come from a long line of educators or people in higher education. So I feel like there's just an experience gap. And the other thing I'm going to say that's so lefty, I'm about to sound like such an annoying this, but I just have to get my shit off. the like dominant ideology right now is one of like neoliberalism, which is like, it means a bunch of things, but one of the things is that it gets rid of the welfare state, and everything. It gets rid of public goods, and everything becomes like private and a commodity. And so we're living in America where Black people are still a part of a slave class. And so everybody, like most people, are not benefiting from neoliberalism or capitalism, especially in education in general. So obviously the people that are going to suffer the most when they're getting rid of public goods and eliminating the welfare state, and deciding that and have decided that a well-educated population is not more valuable than a population that is educated or made up of very few educated people, and everybody else is just going to be a worker. Of course, the people that are going to suffer most are going to be Black people in the United States of America. So like, I think it's just important to zoom out on like how we like actually have gotten here. And it is like neoliberalism and capitalism that have decided that education is not lucrative enough, or there's only enough for a few people to be educated so they can be really wealthy and the rest of us can be poor and make them really, really rich.
You know what's interesting about that? Because you're right? But what's so funny is how I've seen a response to that develop out of leftist spaces in the last like 5 years. I've observed is because higher education is not truly accessible to everybody because of the cost. Instead of the conversation, and because some people there's a feeling of shame that society forces on people who are like on a lot of people who aren't able to get who aren't able to or don't get this higher education, that the response has become about like instead of being pro, getting rid of, student loan forgiveness, all these different things, or, being pro more formal education and attacking the system that tries to make it inaccessible to everybody, there's developed this kind of anti-higher education message that like, it's like, oh, school isn't for everybody. Higher education isn't for everybody. You don't need to go to college to da 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 da. And like, that is one, I have a message I deeply, deeply have a problem with. I actually have a problem with it being like fed to Black people, because I'm like, anybody that lives a life of that has higher education and lives in those spaces knows how incorrect it is. And it's so painful to see me having like, especially when I see college educated peddling that nonsense to people without college degrees, when it's like, I'm somebody, my parents, I always want to, I am somebody who my parents have invested a shit ton of money in my education, like, and not just mine, but all of my siblings, right? Like I'm very privileged in that regard. And I say, like, when I talk about, like, when I think of my childhood, and I'm not like you, Delaney, I'm not sure if I would be like, I wish everybody had like my parents. I'm not sure, but I think everybody could benefit from a few of my parents' mantras. But I don't know if you needed to like live your whole life in academic boot camp and extremism. But I said it to say, like, my childhood was I knew I was going to be a lawyer when I tell you, a little kid, like walking around the house, I knew I was in constant, like, there was no if I was going to do them for workbooks. You're going to do them for workbooks. My parents had me, I wasn't just in school. I was in tutoring. I was in extra classes in the summer. Like, I'm telling you, I was always in school. It was so bad to the point when my parents had me, I took fucking, I had tutoring classes for what was it? Physics. I never took physics in school. Like, for shit I never took. Like, I can't tell you how much schooling my whole childhood. The only thing my mom will buy you is books. She'll make you buy, like, you have to read this many books, do a book report, write her stories. Well, there's a reason why I'm good at reading and writing and all of this. But I said that to say, like, there is an incredible investment made. I like when people be like, oh, you're just so smart, or blah, get the fuck out of here. It's not about, like, yes, like, you could be smart in genes and DNA and all that different stuff, but the people who are in these classrooms, who find themselves in these rooms, who are most academically successful, there was a shit ton of money invested into that. And so that's a huge disadvantage that so many people, they can't do it. I think all the time, like, when I was a kid, I used to hear my daddy say, you're supposed to give your children every more than what you had. And that always seemed like a no-brainer when I heard it as a kid. But now, as an adult, and I think about how much money my parents put in my education, I'm like, where the fuck am I going to get that money from? It's incredible. And so I said it to say, you're already at such people are at such a disadvantage, like it would like in these rooms and dealing with people who have the money in this to like have set their children didn't just act, they didn't just fall into these spots, you know what I mean? It wasn't just based off their natural share, like they're not competing at the same level, they're not, you know what I mean, it's not playing fair. I knew I was going to be a lawyer when I was 7. I came to America for those. You see what I'm saying? There's so many different levels to that. So it's even worse to have that coupled with an anti higher education message to people who are already structurally at such a disadvantage. Yeah,
That's what I was gonna say, because I think that it does take that, because on the opposite end of the spectrum, there is so much money and time and effort and energy being pushed into pushing people out of education. I mean, so many platforms, like I talked about earlier, there's so many non-degree people pushing it. Hell, we have to a point now where there are degree people that are taking advantage and pushing people out of education, getting online saying, "Oh, don't get this degree X, Y, and Z." And then at the bottom of it, they're like, "Now click this link though to my course, so then I can sell you a
Yeah.
method to make you $100,000 a week." So there's a lot of money invested in the other end. So there has to be a lot of money invested in the other side. I do want to ask y'all a question though, because I think that I've only really heard this rhetoric of like school is not for me from a male perspective, like the young black men that I've been around, and especially because like the whole conversation is supposed to be around that central topic. I do want to ask, when did y'all make the decision to say like, okay, I'm gonna go to and finish college? Like there's the other option really ain't an
I was
option.
born.
Oh,
There was never
When I
like
came
there
in,
was never a thought process that I was
period.
not going to.
I think that was built into my family system because, but again, everybody different experiences, but because we are Haitian immigrants. So they were like, hell no, we may not be going to school or, you know, but y'all gonna go to school. So for me, it was never a literally education from the time I could talk or whatever. They were, I told you, gifts for my birthday were encyclopedias, dictionaries. I had to read a certain amount of books. I had to, they would quiz me. We had a chalkboard in the house. We were only allotted so much time to be outside to play because everything needed to be educational. And so I am grateful that within the schools I went to, I had a teacher who pushed me to go to an HBCU. And I say that because I would have probably went to a PWI, which there's nothing wrong with PWIs, but there's everything right with
Well,
HBCUs. And I would just say, you know, like because I was pushed in that direction and I went on a tour, I was able to come home. But at that time, y'all, HBCUs did not have a great rep. I went to try to feed my daddy who don't know nothing about what a HBCU is. I try to tell him, like, Daddy, I went to this, you know, I went to the tour and this is what happened. Mind you, I went to both PWIs and HBCUs on that tour. And I was trying to explain to him my experience. And he was like, well, I heard, well, the people that I work with, when I was telling them that you was looking into the school, they said that school got issues and they got this. And at the time, I ain't gonna hold you. The number one HBCU in the nation did have some issues. Accreditation was going on. I ain't gonna hold you. That was happening over there at the Hill. And but there was so much going into that. But told my dad, like, I have to go to that university. So then they did this parent child like kind of tour.
tour.
And when I went there with him, first thing that happened when we got to Tallahassee, my dad stopped and said, hey, some white people, do y'all know where he used to call it FAMU. Do y'all know what FAMU is? And they were like, and then I said, no, Florida A&M University. These white people who like they were from Tallahassee who know where the school was. They were like, what school is that? What university? No, we don't know. And I'm telling you, like 3 minutes over the train tracks was FAMU. And these people act like that school did not exist. And when my dad got there, the teachers, even though they was going through their issues, the teachers, the culture, the random people that were there, Soul Train, RIP to Soul Train, who was in the quad, they treated my father with such respect. And even knowing that he was an immigrant, they let him know that this was the best decision your daughter could make. They put him in classes too, gave him the whole rollout. They showed him where financial aid was, where we had a struggle there too. But they told him about all the opportunities and things that I could do. They showed him what it looked like, what the trajectory for me would be, even if I was failing, what that would look like. They did a lot for him. They
your
sold
daddy
him
is so much
on
better
it.
than mine.
And Then he let me
Let my
go.
daddy hear accreditation issues and a Soul Train.
It was
To do this.
Soul Train was a man that sold us. Soul Train was a man that sold us food when we was thirsty in the quad on them hot summer days. Okay, so he died, and shout out to Soul Train, a legend over there. But the year that I began to go, we got all of that done, and we had our accreditation back. Obama came that year. It was a good year. Okay, it was a good year when I got there. Thank God. And my dad allowed me to go. But he always mentions that. He says, I will never forget that day we brought Becky up there, and them people act like they didn't know where the school was, and it was across the street the whole time. And the experience that we had with those people over there, where everybody back home was saying, "Oh, don't let your daughter go there. It's going to be," it was totally different. So
My
even
daddy didn't know my sister go to Howard for that reason because people convinced him, or that
yeah,
he thought of it, and he's very wrong because I'm like, boy, Howard is a deeply having connections and doing well. It's
exactly,
none but movers and shakers that are Howard alum, but my
We
daddy
exactly.
didn't
need
let my sister go there
we
for
need
that
the
reason.
next Olay Friends to be about HBCUs, because I for the sake of the conversation, I'm nodding because I love HBCUs, but boy, I'll tell you,
I don't know.
I
I don't know
don't
if I
think
want to spill
that I don't
those
think
secrets.
people
I
would
don't like to
consider
let.
it appropriate if me, who they already don't like my immigrant ass, if I decided to host and I didn't go to HBCU and I decided to host a panel, like host a show for the black HBCUs,
it can be a bunch of
no.
HBCU people. You can invite.
Baby, why would you give your platform to them?
I just think that
Don't do it.
I know this isn't the topic, but HBCUs love that for our people. And there are quite a bit of issues, and the like black excellence thing, like all the things. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. But anyways, I was gonna say I went to North Carolina A&T not because I was ready to be a scholar, but because I was an athlete. I was like bred to be an athlete. I wanted to go D1 to play volleyball. That was the only thing that mattered to me. That and like being an organizer
You would
really,
be a
really young.
volleyball playing nigga. That's so
I
funny.
was, but my whole life was about volleyball. And then when Michael Brown was murdered, my life became less about volleyball and more about like social justice. But it was just about volleyball. And North Carolina A&T, I was getting recruited from like a couple other places. Not too many D1 offers, but North Carolina A&T was like the one place. And I was like, I guess if I'm gonna go D1, like shit, might as well. I wasn't trying to go to A&T because I was like, this is a black school and like all these different things. No, I just wanted to say that I went D1. But I think that there's a bunch of I feel like there's a difference between me being an athlete that was going into higher education, playing volleyball, versus like black boys being athletes going into higher education to play basketball or football, because or baseball or anything, because there's a potential there of like professional professional sports. At the time, there wasn't a professional volleyball league or organization like there is now. So I knew that it was just like me getting into school so that I could like end up getting a degree and going to do something. Exactly. But it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be a volleyball player forever and this is what's going to sustain and support my life. So I want to make that clear, that I don't feel like I was indoctrinated in the same way as black boys around education.
This makes me think of a thing that I want to bring up to y'all about. I'm anti-sport, and let me explain what I mean in terms of raising kids with sport. Nah, no, because sports. My daddy is. I'm 5'2". My daddy's must be 5'5", 5'6". Like there's no reason.
So you a hater is basically
No,
Yeah,
I said he's all man in the house looking for his children to have no athletic dreams.
You didn't have a choice.
No, what I'm saying to you is, right, like, yeah, it's not a thing in my household at all. It's not a place that my parents place any value. My parents don't place any value anywhere outside of education and formal like career professions, because my daddy feels, and I subscribe to a lot of my parents' beliefs when it comes to education and school and these things, because I've seen it play out. I'd be a dirty liar if I didn't know, you know what I mean, if I didn't see it play out. So my dad always felt like, you become an attorney, you're an attorney. You could lose a job, but you will still be an attorney, versus you could have a job somewhere and even get hired in that company. But if you don't have like a certain kind of profession, you get fired, you start over, you have to complete, there's all these different things. That's how my daddy felt about it. But I say all that to say, everybody that I've known now in my life as an adult, like, and including my partner, including CJ, like, who've had parents that place this emphasis on sports, that take it super serious. The amount of depression and unsorted issues that I've seen in children and adults who were like, I just feel like when it's not you, Delaney. This is not talking about you, but I'm just talking after. You just made me think of sports. I've never seen you be a volleyball crackhead. I have no proof that that you are
A
not a
volleyball
functional
crack is
adult.
crazy.
I'm only just finding out you used to play volleyball, so I'm not
I'm
you.
happy there's no proof.
Right. But I'm like, when I see it, I've seen so many, like, even in college when I was a RA, like I had the black guys that were basketball players in the building. They were on the first floor, and I was the fourth floor RA for the girls, but they didn't fuck with their RAs, so they like let them formally be my residents, even though they weren't on my floor. And I've seen like the amount of pressure they are under, the amount of depression that happens when they get an injury, when things don't go this way, because you've instead of like it blows my mind, because I will see, even I was just talking to CJ's little brothers this past weekend. They were staying with us. They're like 12. And when I ask them what they want to do, they're talking about football and shit. And when I say like normal things like, oh, a lawyer or all these other things seem like impossible, or like, and I'm like, the crazy part is the dream you're being taught to go after is what's impossible. Being a lawyer is just a matter, or being any of these other things. You go to school, you do the thing, that's it. You take the test, you call it a day. Like, it is absolutely what's attainable. But yet you're being encouraged to like put your life and dream in your and there's so much, like, no one, people don't talk enough about just how much investment they make. Like, children are being molded to put into this shit, like how much is being sunk into this dream, and what are the long-term effects of that. And I just like, it's made me very anti. I'm just like, my kids, don't come around me with this
I
sports
kind of
shit.
feel you on that though, from the perspective of I see how much it's damaged our boys. And I'm somewhat of a hater too, because I didn't go far in basketball. But also being realistic, it's like statistically, it's not gonna happen. Well, I heard a speaker one time say, like, you're more likely to be the next Obama than to make it to the NBA. Statistically, that's true, and that's wild. Like, so going back to your question too, Omar, bringing this together, what I see from everybody is it was the expectation from somebody. And if your household is enforcing that at a young age, like, that's a big determining factor on if you're going to go. Now, if you don't have that, it's got to be some combination of a coach, a teacher, but the coach is only in it for, like, are you going to help my team win? My dad didn't go to college, but if I said I got a C on something, he was looking at me like, what happened? My grandmother, who was born 1935 in Mississippi, Jim Crow South, when I went over her house, we couldn't even watch TV until we read the whole Jet magazine. We had to read it front to back just to watch her TV. I hated going over there. But I'm the same way now with my kid. Like, pick up the book, read some. I got my kids doing presentations about Black historical figures. You know what I'm saying? But I will say also, too, that I feel like the commodification of Michael Jordan was one of the worst things that ever happened to us, man. Yeah. Because prior to that, think about, and I wish I had something to compare it to. But if you ask black boys in the 1970s what they wanted to do versus the 1990s, it's probably way different. 1965, it's probably way different. I did this video one time about this brother named Charles P. Adams. He was 6'10" in the early 1900s, and he founded Grambling State University because his mentor, Booker T. Washington, encouraged him to, sought him out, mentored him, recruited him, basically. And I always think in my head, what if Charles P. Adams was born and it was around in the 2000s? They would have said that boy is only going to be an athlete. He wouldn't have founded a university. So I think one of the things we can do, really, like, when we see, especially, like, we got to fight the urge, because I've done it too. You see a tall black dude, I know you on the squad. I know you, like, we got to speak something academic into that child's life and really throw a curveball to him. Boy, 6'10" in 8th grade, I want you to say something different. We gotta say something different. But everybody in my neighborhood, if I didn't have my parents to buffer, they never told me I couldn't do it, but they enforced school. I grew up in Chicago when Jordan was winning. What you think we all wanted to do? We thought that was us, and only Derrick Rose made it. And he got hurt. You see what I'm saying?
So one, to Olay's point earlier about the whole how much time, effort, and energy and money is spent into it. This is my, like, biggest fight right now with my aunt, because she is willing to invest so many dollars into anything else for my younger cousin, except for school. Like, she's willing for the spring break to invest in daycare and look into the camps and looking to get in her a car, looking to get in her into this other extracurricular program, but none of it is necessarily tied to education. Now, my cousin is doing perfectly fine in school, so she's okay there. But the $200 that you pay for travel ball for the jersey, not for anything else, but just for the jersey, could totally be put into some sort of educational advancement for it. Mind you, this is not a group of wealthy people. These are people who are living from paycheck to paycheck that has the signature of Uncle Sam on it. But at the same time, they are willing to put whatever extra into these things for the appeasement of the child. I think that's funny. That's one. Two, I do have the same unhealthy, not unhealthy, but hatred towards sports as Olay does. And added on to that reason is because it also creates this unhealthy relationship with like physical fitness to people as well. Super side tangent. Only way that young Black men will maintain fitness is because it's attached to sport. But when the sport dissipates, they stop and they get big. And then when I go to the park and I meet up with them, they're telling me about their high school days, but they're actively not running. But that's because it's not attached to sport anymore. So they won't stay in shape. But nonetheless, to the other point that I was talking about, yeah, mine was the same way. Like, I think for me, and I guess this is a bigger point about like the young Black boys and what needed to be done in order for them to keep education at the forefront of their lives. Mine was from day one today now, education is it. We're stopping to read the signs as you drive from Georgia to Florida with my aunt. We're going to read those signs. We're going to talk about it. We're going to give our opinions. Let's see if you got the context from that. My father and my aunt, they were voluntary mentors and tutors at my elementary school. So imagine being in the second grade and first grade, and your aunt and dad are at the school at 7 o'clock in the morning, looking over kids' homework. It sounds cool in the beginning until they say the most craziest things to you in front of your friends. But that was the thing. And then also for me, I was allergic to grass, and I like nice things. So
Are
my
you
mom
really allergic
told
to
me,
grass?
yeah, I'm allergic to like grass and pollen. Like I used to be. I think I've cured it. I'm Dr. Sebi on the low, but but no, my mom was like, I don't know what you're gonna do. You need to get a job behind a desk because you can't do anything outside because you're gonna sneeze and stuff like that. But even that subtleness was like, yeah, you better keep education at the forefront of your life, because if you don't, these are the outcomes. So the idea of like doing anything else wasn't even really presented. But that's why it amazes me when I hear or heard my peers back then say school isn't for me. I always looked at them and was like, well, what else is for you? We don't even see anything else to make the determination that this other thing is for me. Y'all ain't never even been to a basketball game. You just seen it on TV, right? You ain't never seen plumbing for real. Y'all toilets ain't never broke for you to see plumbing and say, I want to be a plumber. Or your mom takes her car to the auto zone or whatever the mechanic shop is and comes home with it. You've never seen anything else besides education. So how can all of a sudden, just in the 11th grade, man, school ain't for me? We just went through so much school. What else do you know? I didn't even think there was nothing else, to be honest with you.
Yeah. You made some really salient points there, but I just can't get off the like athletic hatred. And if I'm honest, I do think it's because I maybe am the only, real athlete here. So I think
Former
No,
athlete.
see, you're giving.
I think
You're.
no. I'm still an athlete. I'm still an
Once an
athlete.
athlete,
Oh yeah.
always an athlete.
What is
I
he playing
box.
volleyball?
I
No,
box.
that once an athlete, always an athlete, because that's what they be telling me at the park with their beer bellies. They
No,
talk
they
about
they
They can't
they
even make
live
it up the
in
court
Yeah.
they
back.
live in the
Well,
heyday. They live in
Yeah.
the
look,
heyday.
I don't have that. I don't have that. I'm living right now, today.
Okay.
I can get on the court right now. I'll be in a
No,
rec
not
league. Stop
yours,
playing with
but
me.
I believe
Um,
it. I believe it.
but I think that I think the points around what going to school to like play sports does to the brain, it's real. I definitely think it's real. I struggled after getting off the volleyball team because I thought I was going to go to law school and like go and be a civil rights attorney and change the world. But I didn't do that.
Lawyers don't change the world.
Yeah, that I soon
There's
found
nothing to
out.
be sad about.
Yeah. But I will also say, just to bring it back to the other point I made, is that like people wanting to be athletes as like a young kid I don't think is, in a perfect world, it wouldn't be a determining factor of like where your life goes. And I once again just want to like zoom out. But it shouldn't be all of that. It should be like okay that kids want to like play sports and do all these things. The issue is that people want to play sports and they want their kids to be successful in sports because they're looking for a way out of suffering.
Yeah.
Because there's not many other ways to not suffer as a Black person in the United States. And that is the reality of the situation, is that to people want to be ultra wealthy because they aren't getting their basic needs met by just like having a normal, like I don't think everybody needs to be a lawyer. Like you should be able to be a bus driver and have some dignity and like
Society
have
logic.
a great, yeah, well, and like have a great job and feel good about it and take
Yeah,
care
it
of your
should be.
kids.
You
And I
should.
know we're talking about like an imaginary world, but I think it's important to be thinking about that like while we're having these conversations, that sure, it's like really fucked up that kids are already thinking that like at 10 I want to be the next Michael Jordan because I want to buy my mom a house. I hate that Black kids are thinking that.
I
I hate that. I
Nothing.
hate that that responsibility is on Black children. Like that's the worst thing in the world. But I think it's up to us as older people to be looking and zooming out and being like, damn, what are the things that we can do that like are not going to have our kids in this position?
You're
What are the things that in
absolutely right.
society that we need to like really dig into to make some sort of change? And
You're,
I feel like it sounds so pie in the sky, but there's so many things and so many efforts that are working against us from like having an imagination and working towards the things that we should be doing or the way that we could live.
you're absolutely right, and we should be talking about and thinking about those things. But the unfortunate reality about the capitalistic world we live in is our parents can't even pass on to children like a world they don't live in the sense that we don't. The reason Black children are thinking about that is because that's what we are raised to be thinking about. We don't go to school for bettering ourselves. We're not inherently. That's why we don't inherently appreciate what is a liberal arts education, right? Like because we're not going to school. We're taught we're going so that we could get good grades, so that we could get a good job, so that we could pay like so that we could work and
Yeah.
pay our bills and take care of ourselves until we dead. That's how that's like that is literally it. So I think you're absolutely right. It's like we need to be thinking in this larger like zoom out and think about how this capitalistic framework has us in this constant like cogs in this machine, like where we're just going to do or whatever and try to get a job and make money. That being said, because it is the one that we're dealing with, kids are always like, from you're a little kid, they're asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because they're always just trying to, we're born, we're being molded, trying to be pushed towards, a career because we're trying to be pushed towards survival. It's the same thing as like, the mama bird trying to like get the little bird ready before you get out of the nest, right? It's like for us, what that means in the world that we live in is a job. It's like, oh, how are you going to survive? And how you're going to survive has everything to do with money and thus the jobs. I think, and I say all that to say, it's still crazy to me. Like, I understand, like, yes, it is completely born out of poverty in this larger systemic issue why people are teaching their kids, or they want them to, they're seeing it as a way out, right? Like, oh, if you were to do this, you would really blow, you'd really make a lot of money, and we could essentially, be out of this situation overnight. But the thing that I think is unfortunately crazy for me is you are way more likely to have that just off of going to college and get
Thank
like
you. Thank
a regular job, that's my thing is like, it is very true. Like, I fully get it. Like poverty requires us to be thinking in terms of what the fuck we're gonna do to save the family. We're gonna do career job. They put these different like expectations on a place. It's just like what I don't understand is why, if you have options on the table, why is Hail Mary the one you're going for? Like that's what I don't get. I'm like, you could a couple of generations of college educated with good jobs or whatever move and shake us further. You know what I mean? Then that's what I don't get. Like I fully understand where it comes from. I just don't. Well, I do. Let me don't say I don't understand, because I do understand it. It's what seems more normal. You don't know a bunch of college educated. If everybody that isn't surrounded by a bunch of college educated with good jobs, making good money or whatever, and that's not being told as what's accessible to you, and it's not being treated as accessible in the schools you're going, to bring it back to our larger full discussion, like No, you're not going to be thinking about that. You're going to be thinking about them telling you your expectations are too high, to what Ernest is saying. You need to have more realistic expectations. And what they're telling you as a child that is realistic is ball and rap and all these things that are far less realistic. So
I think
The
about
Hail the
that.
Hail Mary thing, real quick, guys. The Hail Mary thing is so funny because thinking about it from, I know we don't like sports here, most of us, but the whole concept of like, it being like, oh, this is thinking about maybe somebody that's been through, the juvenile system and they have all these other things. So for them, it's like fourth down and they decide to Hail Mary. I mean, maybe that makes a little bit more sense. There's some kids, some black kids, young black men that are still like, I'm by the touchdown. It might be fourth down. I could just kick this field goal. Screw it. Why not run a trick play right here? Why not run a why not throw a Hail Mary right here when I've already had things set up for me to quote unquote be as successful as possible? I'm still not gonna go to school. I'm in the suburbs and I'm still gonna try to rap.
Mhm.
I'm still gonna try to play ball at 5'3".
no,
I'm doing it.
It makes me think, like, I think a Kaepernick show, that first episode, that scene when it was showing like black men who were going to the draft, and the comparison between that and the plantation. And what I get from that is just, when have black men in this situation ever been deemed worthy outside of what they can do physically based on their physical prowess? And I don't think we often, as an educator, like with for me, I think about, when do we institute new curriculum, new content to disrupt a form of thought pattern? Like, when were white people strategically taught that what happened was wrong in America, right? They get taught on an individual basis for the most part, right? Depending on their family, right? We haven't had institutions in place that have tried to correct that harm, that trauma that we live through. And then we got to think about, who are our actual role models as young black boys. I was just reflecting today, because when I'm working out, like, everybody got that workout playlist, and, I got some crazy stuff on there that I used to listen to when I was young, and some more current stuff too. And I was just like, man, it was one song. Matter of fact, I'm gonna just say it. It was Meek Mill, and I love the song "Dreams and Nightmare." I don't even listen to him like that, but I love the way that song go. And I was just like, yo, that song starts off so inspiring. Then why we gotta just throw in random misogyny all the time? It's almost like that's how we get taught manhood is based on. And I'm saying that because, as a child, if I don't have the counter of my father, the pastors, the coaches, and the regular dudes, I had a decent amount of black male educators when I was in high school. It's like, I think that manhood is synonymous with, I have to fit this mold, look this way, and I can be vulnerable to an extent, but then I still got to throw in some misogyny. I still got to throw in some violence. I still got to talk about some drug use a little bit. And when we grew up, y'all, like, we didn't have the option. I don't know if this is good or bad or not, but we didn't have the option to choose, different YouTube channels, different social media channels. It was like, we're going to watch BET, MTV, we're going to watch sports. What did we see all in the 2000s on BET and MTV? It was black dude, like, posturing and acting a certain way. When I would talk to young men, they talk about they love J. Cole, love Kendrick. I said, how many of y'all know that J. Cole graduated from a college, top of his class? Like, they don't know these things because there's no association with intelligence. To be a great rapper, like a really good rapper, you have to have a high level of intelligence, writing skills, performance, communication. We just see the pie in the sky, and I promise you, one of the things for me, we talk about like athletics. When I realized that I love watching basketball, but I loved playing it because it was fun. That was a wake up call for me. When I was in tryouts one day in high school, I was like, yo, one day, I don't want to do this. I don't want to run all these plays. I just want to play 21. Like, I just want to play a 32 with my boys and just hoop and chill. I ain't trying to, for me, basketball playing is fun, not a 2-hour practice where 120 of those, 119 of those minutes is spent on learning plays. And I think we got to teach, like, you can love the sport, but it don't always have to be to make the money from it. It could be the tangible. What do you gain from it? That's teamwork. So how can we translate that to our community? We build teams. What do you learn also? Listening to a coach, listening to an elder, like, use this thing as a vehicle in the skills that we can transfer to different careers and things like that. And I think, just kind of ending on that point, is we have to be very particular about who we have as to our kids as role models. And oftentimes the reason why they say they don't probably need college is because the people who are propped up in front of them are the rare instance of people who did not go to school. But we don't think about statistically how likely that is to actually happen.
That's the
Is that
problem,
true
right?
though?
It's a privilege to be able to do shit for fun. Like to
Right.
be to like it's like if you're in a impoverished household, it's like your parents can't even financially afford to invest in something that they don't think there might be some, you know what I mean, some return on the investment, right? It's like that in and of it's like even and it's so funny because I think in black households, like even on any socioeconomic level, I think because of the world you live in as a black person, I gotta work twice as hard, I gotta work 3 times. I think there is a difficulty for us to realize that I can like something and I can be good at something and it or I could not be good at it. I could like it and just want to do it for fun. It's just be my hobby or whatever. Like I don't know, including myself, I don't know too many black people that have skills that they haven't had to make a part of their, you know what I mean, their survival, their business, their career. Like there aren't many skills sets that I hold on to myself just as a person and that I'm able to do as a hobby with how much you have to invest in your career and trying to survive, right? Like I could draw, but I don't draw. I can crochet, but the thread is in my closet. Like when would you know what I mean? Because the other skills that I have are the ones that I have to do with. Like, oh, I write my scripts. I can make videos, I can do this, I can whatever. I can be a lawyer. They're all channeled that way. So it's like that's the unfortunate part is that is what needs to happen is that we need kids to be able to like, I just want to play basketball. I don't want to take it seriously. I'm not trying to go pro, but it's like how many households are going to feel like they can? Like that's truly an option. Omar, you were talking.
Real.
No, I was saying, because again, this is the thing that tripped me up so much when we were in school is that everybody around you is college educated. Now they may not look like you, like if you depending on the school that you go to or whatever the case may be. So that representation piece is like very important. They may not look like you, talk like you, or whatever the case may be. But all your teachers, your coaches, for the most part, like I'm talking about in school, and I think that decision probably happened somewhere in like the late middle school, early high school is when a lot of my peers were saying school just isn't for me. If everybody around me that I see right now is college educated and living some sort of life that I think is okay and obtainable, that outweighs the 2 times that I see like a Kanye West on BET or whatever the case may be throughout the week. I just don't that's the thing that never clicked to me. Is there's a lot of representation in your life for you to be saying I want to do the impossible on the other side of that.
But
Like that
not
doesn't
representation that you aspire to. Like who's
and
being shown
that's
as the
true.
picture of like who like people don't grow up as kids, and I don't imagine little boys aren't growing up and trying to be like you're aspiring to be the who's doing okay. You know what I mean? And like no one's fawning over like the basketball teacher at the school or the your history teacher or whomever, right? Like you're aspiring to like you know what I mean? Which is why representation is so important, right? To be able to see people like on a really successful scale doing all these different kinds of things. Like when I think of like why I wanted to be a lawyer, like, you know, there is a level of I always associated that with success. You know what I mean? And like even in the mom was like, I grew up on a 21/7 mile long island. And it's like who are lawyers who were successful, who were the politicians, who were the members of parliament, that was who was powerful. That's who I saw it that way. But I wasn't I think that is what it is. It's like you see that, but like as a kid, you know when they make those jokes and they be like, you weren't like in movies and shows and they be like, you didn't grow up wanting to be the principal and you didn't want to grow up wanting to be this, and it's like this laughing thing at like as a kid, you're supposed to have big dreams, you know what I mean? Like a big
Mhm.
idea of success. And it's like we're not even though people are telling you like be realistic when they come into like shoot down your dreams and stuff, there's still kind of this kind of inherent that you're supposed to dream big, and none of that
Yeah.
are like you're supposed to be like you're supposed to be that nigga, you're trying to be that like not a that you know what I
We
mean? And
put so much like in this country, our self-worth is based on what we do for a living. And we feel that, you know what I'm saying? Like we put more in stake in what somebody does for a living than the person that they are. You know what I'm saying? Like the people who was on the ground doing this work during our movements and stuff, they had regular jobs. You know what I'm saying? Dr. King was a pastor. People don't
Or
even
they
look at
didn't have jobs and they were being taken care of by our community.
exactly. So like I think if we like just the care, and unfortunately, just having good character doesn't equate to having dollars in this country. And I think that's something that is a trickle down effect and impact of capitalism. But the first thing we talk about when we introduce ourselves, like, yo, what you do for a living? Or, where you, as opposed to like what type of, or trying to gain a better understanding of what type of person somebody is. I recall I had a student one time ask me, this was a young black girl, and this is when I started to do a lot of local activism, and I would be in local papers and stuff like that. And she asked me one day, she said, Mr. Kerm, how did you become an activist? And it was the weirdest question I ever got. And I realized that she asked that, though, not because of what I was doing, but because I was getting recognition for it. So it was kind of like a buy-in a little bit, though. It was like, she's young, 17. So it was like, okay, she sees that that's getting people to talk about me, but you got to really, you're not doing it for that. But to that point, I have been her teacher for a while. Nobody's like, how do you become a teacher? I want to be that. But if in other cultures and the cultures we actually come from, like traditionally, teachers are held to a high regard. But in America, that's just not so.
Yeah, no, it is unfortunate because it shouldn't matter your job, but it does matter. Like my life experience based on whether or not I'm a lawyer is very, like, how treat me before and after they know I'm a lawyer is, I cannot express to you worlds difference. I said I became a lawyer just so I could tell I'm a lawyer. Clearly, for the rest of my life, just the benefit to let know stop playing with me, and it's happened on so many, like, and that is actually what kind of infuriates me. Like, why I wanted to be a public defender, why I do the work that I do, because I'm always like, I see how you was just getting ready to treat me before you knew I was a lawyer, and so your standard treatment for regular was bigotry, was oppression, was gatekeeping, was this, was all these different things. Like that was that. So yeah, it shouldn't matter, but it does. It really shouldn't matter, but it does.
Wow.
Damn, we should end on a more uplifting note. Someone say something positive.
Dang, I had
Omar,
a closing
smile,
note
like
that
have a more
wasn't,
positive
but,
face, Omar.
More people should go to school. Everybody should go education. Go education.
The new people that are telling these young boys to specifically not go to school are peddling something to you. So for the young men out there that may be listening, find positive male role models and influences. And for the older, younger men out there that are these positive male role models, reach out and touch somebody. Let them know that you can do both. I feel like, and that's why I stay in my cousin's life. I let them know that you can do both. You can go to school and you can do YouTube. It's totally possible. And the only way that I would leave my traditional 9 to 5 or would have left school, whatever, is if one became so much greater than the other. But the advantages that I got, the networking opportunities that I got, the creativity that I got, that was all peaked and created in college, was the most beautiful thing in the world, and I would do it all over again. I'm tired of the rhetoric of I wouldn't do it again if I'm a software engineer and I've got 3 degrees. Now I do make 200,000, but I would never go to school again.
Right, be talking about shit.
Hogwash too. All of it's hogwash. College is a beautiful thing. Education is even more
a
beautiful.
liberal arts education. I in particular, Stan, I just want to say this. Like, I love my undergrad. Like, I know I was dragging my law school. That being said, law school is a means to an end. That's never like, if you want to be a lawyer, go be a lawyer. Like, law school is a miserable experience, but that is neither here nor there. But undergrad, I go up from my alma mater, Ohio University. I love them. My liberal arts education was the best thing that ever happened to me. I think about it all the time, what an ignorant, loud, and wrong would be if I didn't get my liberal arts education, because everything that I came to believe and was exposed to, I entered college 17 years old, arrogant, uninformed, and thinking I know what my position is. And I think about it all the time, like, wow, you'd be a dumb bitch and you wouldn't know. You'd have no idea. So you'd have the same level of arrogance and intensity and you'd be dumb. I thank God for my Ohio University. I love them.
I was going, like, I wanted to mention this at some point, and I'm about to spin it to something positive, okay? Something that I noticed, too, while everybody was talking about this, I noticed that there, at the same time that black male enrollment in college is going down, there's a slight uptick in black male enrollment in the military, right? And that's something we ain't looking at a lot in terms of the American empire, the imperialism that we see. But what I'm going to add to that is, if you talk to a lot of young folks about why they go to the military, we know it ain't because they love America. It's because they trying to afford college. They're trying to get benefits. So we see there's a desire to do better. And we know that while college is going through the roof, the prices are crazy, but then that military recruiter, that the ROTC is handing you an opportunity. You could just, like, same day. If you can't make Air Force, we got the Army for you same day. So I think we're seeing that. And for some people, unfortunately, that is the path that they feel like they have to take. But I think that also shows that we do have that group of young men that do aspire to do that. So I think that's something to take note of. And I would say too, for all, like Omar said, for all the young folks watching this, I could not do content. I could not speak to kids unless I went to college. It's crazy because I went in for psychology, almost flunked out. I took Black history courses. I had the most amazing professors. I love, like you said, Olay, I love college. I'm going back to my school next week for the award ceremony. I love being there and just learning and conversing with people in an environment to just feed off each other. I get a history major. While I was doing that, I took a journalism class. So all the stuff I do now ties into what I did in college. History degree, got my education degree, and I took a journalism course. You can't just figure that out by taking somebody's online course that's free for the first 7 days. We need to be in these spaces.
Hey everybody, quick little announcement. Your girl was nominated for a Webby Award, okay? They nominated me in social impact for all of my work on Illuminati and the Illuminati-verse, and I would love it if you voted for me. I have the link in the description below, so if you could just drop what you're doing right quick and vote for your girl, I would appreciate that. The Illuminati-verse is huge and always expanding, so let me tell you where to find everything. Subscribe to my main channel, Illuminati, to find my Illuminati productions, which are my long-form video essays, my deep dives. You can also join the main channel, Illuminati, to get access to my exclusive show, Olay and Chill, and my backlog of content like Iconic and Illuminati Joints are all on the main channel. Subscribe to my new channel, Illuminati Politics, so you don't miss my interviews with Brad Lander and Zoran Mamdani, who are running for New York City Mayor, as well as my State of the Union type addresses that I do with my O Squareds, and any explicitly political content I have planned for you going forward. Subscribe to Illuminati Pop for all my TV and movie takes, reviews, and breakdowns. We have all the fun over there, and we also have a Patreon for Illuminati Pop where you can get all the videos uncensored. Subscribe to Olay and Friends for my podcast, Olay and Friends. Subscribe to Illuminati Bites if you want my takes but don't have an hour plus to spend. And last but not least, subscribe to my Substack Illuminati for all my writing.